superstar here with us today, eh, Joe?
Absolutely, guys. Beth Matthews,
My
aka
Canadian is coming out.
yeah, and well, Beth is like half Canadian, anyways. Buffalo is basically a part of Canada, and Canada is about to be a part of America.
Oh, so we're basically all one at this point.
It's all one family here, yeah. So Beth, aka Beth by a Billion, I just call people by their Instagram handle. I told you guys last week, one of my friend's kids' name on Instagram was Poopy Lukey. He started that when he was 10, and I think he regrets it now because he's like 17. And every time I see him, I'm like, "What's up, Poopy Lukey?" So Beth by a Billion, I actually asked it. I mean, Beth, there's a million things we could say. I asked her, I said, let's do 2 truths and a lie. So I want you guys, there's a number 1, number 2, number 3. You guys have to pick the lie. Okay. So number 1, she loves pickles. Number 2, she has jumped out of an airplane. And number 3, she was on SNL. So pop in the chat what you think the actual lie is. So either that she loves pickles, she jumped out of a plane, or she was on SNL.
Ooh.
So we got some SNL, we got some pickles, airplane's a lie. Matt Jones says pickles. One. Okay, so it's kind of all over the place. So Beth, let me ask you, give us the first truth.
The first truth is I have jumped out of a plane.
Okay. I knew that one because you did it. I think you did it at She Inc., right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I knew that one. Now the reality is I don't know which one. I would have to think that pickles is a lie. But anyway, what is the next truth?
The next truth is that I was once on Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What was that?
This is just a few short years ago. I think I was 19, and I was dating a young man who was originally from Long Island, and his father was an audio engineer for NBC. So when we were visiting his family, his dad said, "Why don't you come to the dress rehearsal?" And I said, "Great, that'd be fun." And they opted to incorporate the audience in the opening skit, but they didn't want to take the risk of using the live audience. So they recorded the dress rehearsal audience, and it just happened to pick my section, and there I was front and center acting like a zombie. Acting as though
that's awesome.
Yeah, so kind of fun.
That's crazy. That's fun. Beth runs a great business. She's an industry leader. She speaks, she coaches, she trains. She just crushes it. So Beth, we're excited to hear from you. We're grateful to have you here on Rocket Fuel. We're going to turn some time over to Beth. As always, guys, ask, pop questions in the chat if you have them. And then we'll try to leave some time at the back end to do some Q&A as well. So Beth, turn it over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm going to share my screen, guys, because I do have some content that I think is valuable for you to have eyes on. Don't judge me while I open this up because you'll potentially see my messy desktop. But so I am Beth Matthews. I am Beth by a Billion as a nod to my beloved Buffalo Bills. So in addition to Mr. Brightside, that is the inspiration for my handle because I have been a devoted fan for enough years that it's been painful, starting in the Jim Kelly era, and yes, watching us lose multiple Super Bowls in a row, and then going through an extreme drought. But with that, one of the things that I've always admired about this team is they have grit, they have heart, and truly the fan base, if you've never experienced the Bills Mafia, is one in its own. They would leave every game, and I was at many of them, and it didn't matter how badly we lost and got blown out, which was often. They'd always leave and be like, "That's okay, we got the next one. Bills are gonna win by a billion." So it just became this mindset that despite the odds, you can always have a positive outlook and mindset towards winning. So just a little background on that handle. And so when people call me Beth by a Billion, I am okay with it. Just like people to understand the context around it. So thank you for the introduction, Joe and Amy. I'm really excited to share today with you guys. So my win today is we're on the last day of Q1, and I have written and closed more business in Q1 this year than I did in the last 2 years combined. And there's a reason I share this is I went through a really rough patch. I went through a whole divestiture of a partnership. I completely reworked my business, and there's some parallels here. But the other piece is I made a decision that I was going to approach my business differently. And part of that is I also made a decision that I was going to have some really strong professional boundaries around the days, the times, the hours I work, as well as the types of clients that I work with. So I'm going to go through this at a very high level. This is a presentation that I've shared numerous times, so it can get more in depth. I will share the slides with Joe and Amy afterwards because there are some live links that if you want to take a little bit deeper dive, you can. But I'm just going to ask everybody to be engaged, participate, put your phones down for the next 30 to 40 minutes. This is your time. And ask questions because we are going to allocate some time at the end. So I call my business by design. And the reason that it kind of stemmed from that is I started as a top producing agent. I was a drug dealer legally and decided that the pharmaceutical sales world was not for me. There were a lot of things that once I saw behind the curtain weren't in alignment with the way I operate. And so I had this goal of moving into the real estate sales space and, of course, going to my husband at the time and saying, hey, I want to give up this career with a guaranteed salary and a company car and all these benefits to go sell houses where maybe I'll get paid and maybe I won't. And by the way, it's 2008, so everything had just crashed, and I was met with a lot of resistance. So I share this because I had to make a decision, and then I had to also make sure that I allocated time appropriately because my commitment to my family was that I would work both jobs for 2 years, and that if at the end of 2 years I wasn't able to replace my income in real estate from pharma, then I would give up the dream, but I had to try. And so it forced me to be very, very specific about my calendar and how I manage that. So I had a little bit of a catalyst out of the gate that forced me to have to be really strong with my boundaries. Now, if you aren't currently, it can take some undoing, but this is probably the area that I would encourage everybody to focus on the most, is really getting in tune with your why. And I know we all say it, like, what's your why? And oftentimes it's kind of surface if we're being honest with each other. I actually have a visualization exercise that in the more evolved version of this, I take a group through. It is linked in the live slides. So if you want to listen to it in the comfort of your own home and go through that process, it takes 5 to 10 minutes and I highly, highly recommend it. But for the purpose of today, I just want you to ask yourself this question. And I want you to ask yourself this question 3 times in a row, because often the first answer we give ourselves is not our true answer. And that question is simply this: what do I want? What do I want? And what do I want? And whatever comes to mind, and it's usually when you get to that third what do I want that you get your honest truth. So my honest truth was I wanted to be a rock star. I loved being a top producing agent. I built a team. I then transitioned that into an independent brokerage. And one day I woke up and I looked around and I was like, what the heck happened? None of this is what I intended it to be. And it's because I had kind of taken my eye off the ball and stopped asking myself that question. So the reason I share this is the first thing that you really need to understand is your emotional purpose, which is going to inform your personal vision, that then informs your core values, and then your daily motivation. Because not everybody is, waking up ready to jump out of bed and dive into this. We have our good days and our bad days, but this should really be your true north. And so everything that I do ties back to, why am I doing this? What is my deepest why? So there is some woo to all of this, and here's the link that will take you through your future self exercise, but it's so important that you start with the woo and then tie it into the work because you have to have that emotional intelligence. If you're just waking up and going through the motions every day, then the reality is there's going to be a point of exhaustion, burnout. You're going to say, why am I doing this? And so if it's just, hey, I want to be a top producer, cool, but why do you want to be a top producer? What does that income mean for yourself? Is it money driven? Is it accolades? And there's no right or wrong answers. I think that was one thing that it took me a long time to accept is I don't have to operate from somebody else's expectations. The things that are important to me don't need to be justified to anybody else. And then what I do is I transcribe that into goals and daily disciplines. And I'm going to show you very tactically exactly what that looks like. So once I have an understanding of what my goals are, guys, this is not anything that you haven't heard before, but I think oftentimes we need to hear it more than once, is I just drill down into the most basic thing, and that is my conversations. How many people do I need to talk to every day? And the reason we need to hear this over and over again is because we often try to complicate the process to avoid the work that we know we should be doing. So there's no silver bullet here, but you do need to dedicate time to having conversations every single day. And if your calendar doesn't reflect that, that's going to be your homework. So I know exactly how many conversations I need to have to set an appointment, how many appointments I have to set to meet an appointment, how many I need to meet to sign, which then go under contract and then close. It's simple. It is the standards of success. Map is the path. And so if you're not certain what those daily or weekly activities are, this is going to be shared in a QR code at the end. It is yours. But I would encourage you to go through this activity. So once you've identified what your annual income goal is, this kind of light beige is the areas that you'll complete based off of your individual numbers. So here's an example. If I want to make $100,000 a year and half of my income is coming from listings, which is $50,000, and then I'm on a team with a 50-50 split. And again, you can see I'm drilling down all the details. Once you complete all of this light beige, it's going to auto-populate all of the darker beige. And then when you look at the very, very bottom, I need to have 100 conversations a week, which is 20 a day, which is 16 hours a week or 3 hours a day to achieve my $100,000. So it's taking something that feels maybe big and challenging, and it's drilling it down into something that's bite-sized and attainable. Is where can you make $100,000 a year working 3 hours a day? Not many places, but you have to be diligent about it. It goes into more detail about how many listings you need to take each year and how many buyers you need to sign each year. Again, this is all editable. So I encourage you to do this and then also revisit it on a quarterly basis and see how you're trending. Because I promise you, if you're having more conversations 90 days from now than you are right now, you're also going to have better quality conversations because you're just putting in the reps. So again, nothing sexy or surprising about this, but I think sometimes we need to revisit what the basics are and really drill down to what that means for our day-to-day. All right. So the next thing that I did is once I have this vision of what my personal why is, I had to attach a revenue goal to that. How much money do I need to make to be this future version of myself? So if you've asked yourself 3 times, what do I want? There's probably a number that you have in mind as far as how you need to show up to achieve that and what that outcome is. So take your desired income and now divide it by 2,000. I think it's technically 2080, but for the sake of simplicity, divide it by 2,000, and that is your hourly rate. So if your goal was $100,000 annually, then your hourly rate is right around $50 an hour. And this is
just
really...
to testify to this, Beth, it's so important to know your hourly rate. It's like we create these income goals and then we don't really think about how much our time is worth, and then we allow things and people that are complete wastes that could never amount to our hourly rate to take our time. And so it's like it's so important to drive down to this, because if you don't know your hourly rate and if you don't protect your time, money value, then it's going to be nearly impossible. Then you're just relying, Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, but then you're just relying on like miracles to get you to your goal, which is never going to happen. So you have to know, like, if I'm going to give Joe an hour of my time, how much is my time worth? And is there a world in which Joe and I can do something that would, if not meet, eclipse the actual rate I'm trying to achieve?
Yeah, you're spot on. And this has helped me immensely, because one of the questions that I ask myself when I'm making a decision about where to allocate my time is, would I pay somebody $50 an hour to do this job? So guys, right now, like I don't even check my own email. I check my email once a day, but I've hired an assistant because I know myself that when I see my inbox full, it takes me off course because I feel compelled to address everybody's concerns right then and there. And so one of the ways that I've overcome that is I ask myself, would I pay myself $50 an hour to go through my inbox? And my answer was easily no. So I have a virtual assistant that I pay a quarter of that because she's a high level virtual assistant. So if you've used a VA, like $10 an hour is a really healthy income for somebody in the Philippines, but she's fantastic. She has learned how to respond to a lot of my emails using my voice. And we just have a great process. Like she goes through and she organizes my inbox. So I log in around noon once I've finished my focus time, and I'm going to show you guys my calendar. And I'm only addressing the things that I am the only person that can address them. The other thing that we started doing is if she's not sure if she's responding in the manner that I would respond, she just saves it as a draft. And then I review it and I say, yeah, that was great. Or, hey, I'm going to tweak this, but it's learning. I'm literally creating an extension of myself to live in my inbox. And I'm going to teach you guys how to quantify this in a different manner, which I think may be even more valuable. So I want you to understand what the value of a no is. I think we always work from a place that we want to say yes to everybody and everything. But to Joe's point, when you're saying yes to things that aren't in alignment with your skill set, your values, your why, you're ultimately taking away from something that is. Time is a non-renewable resource, and we all have the same amount of hours in the day. So you have to protect your time and your value. When I started asking myself the question, would I pay myself $50 an hour, somebody else $50 an hour to do this job? And the answer was no. I then realized I needed to either automate it or delegate it. And we live in an era that there are so many things that you can automate that without having to go and bring on salaries and build your overhead that way, there's some great tools out there. The other thing that it helps me do is really focus on my success. I do a time audit weekly. And where I've learned to adjust my mindset from, I'm not saying no to something, I'm saying yes to a future something when I politely decline a request. And I've learned to quantify that. Actually, one of the ways I do this, and I've taught my agents to do this, I'll use very simple numbers. So we've decided I need to have 100 conversations to set an appointment. Okay, and I'm going to use very easy numbers for our purposes. And my average commission is $10,000. So 100 conversations will get me a closing. So 100 conversations will get me $10,000. That's the way I had to train my mind. But what we find is fear of loss is a greater motivator than the opportunity to gain. So it's like, it's really hard to hear no 99 times until I said this. Every time I hear no, I just paid myself $100. So I take $10,000 divided by 100, because I'm going to make $10,000 after 100 conversations. But it's only going to lead to one closing, which means 99 times I'm going to be told no. So if I take 99 times 100, if I told you that every time you heard no, you'd make $100, would that feel different? So it's really a game that you have to play with yourself and adjusting your mindset. And then it increases your efficiency substantially. Guys, when you see what I can accomplish in a week and still be home for dinner, and I don't work most weekends, most of the time, I don't even work Friday afternoons. So I front load my week, I accomplish a lot, and then I work on my business Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because I'm also not the type that cannot be doing something.
Hey, Beth, can I share an idea as well?
Please.
So guys, if you took your average closing, and let's say the goal is to close 20 units a year, which would make you $200,000 in GCI. If you're able to understand the numbers, so understanding the value of a no is super important, but then even going, okay, I'm going to close 1 out of every 5 appointments I go to. So technically, if I'm going to make $10,000 per deal, I would have to say I make $2,000 for every appointment I meet face to face. even though that appointment may not close and pay you money, you're going to have 5 face-to-face client appointments to get one closing. So then if you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to even geek out more than that and go only half of my appointments show up, I'm now going to make $1,000 for every appointment I set. And it's like, and then you could geek out and go, well, how many calls does it take to set an appointment? And you're like, okay, every conversation I have, every no is $100, right? And so it's like, that becomes incredibly motivating. So then if you're like, if I want to increase my income, I have to hear more no's, meaning I have to have more conversations. And so it's like, and then that driving across town to this appointment you think is a waste of your time. If you're like, well, I know that this appointment is going to make me $2,000 because I have to have 5 to close one. It almost becomes like a mind game that's so powerful to play, Beth. What you're teaching here is because we can't just, if people do this with leads, they're like, oh yeah, I pay $400 per Zillow lead. So when I close a deal, I have to take $400 off. It's like, no, you have to account for every deal that doesn't close. You can't just count the ones that do. So it works in the negative that way, but then it works in the positive. If you go like, all right, if I'm going to have, you know, five face-to-face meetings to equal one closing, I have to divide that closing by 5 and realize I made that money on each appointment. And so that way it becomes incredibly motivating. Even when you meet somebody and they're a complete disaster, you're like, well, I just made $2,000, on to the next one.
Yeah, I love that. And it really is a mindset shift that once you can really grasp that, it will change the way you feel towards the business. And I think that's so important. All right, so let's talk a bit about the calendar management. I think this is the thing that I maybe am most known for. Let me get to a clean week here so that you guys can see this and move our floating heads. Okay, so this is my week at a glance. Welcome to my world. And it is color coded, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what I do here. I do know that there is the capability of doing this on Outlook. I don't know it specifically, so Google or Chat GPT this, but one of the things that I encourage everybody to start with is over on the side here, you can see there's this time insights. And when you click more insights, you have the ability to color code the events in your world. So one of the things I did first and foremost was I color coded everything that I was going to time block. So you see meetings for me are in gray, and that's because candidly, most meetings drain me. I don't like to have days full of meetings, so I'm very cognizant of that. I'm a firm believer that a meeting without food could have just been an email. Then I allocate time to professional development. This is my focus time. Anything that's in green is a money-making activity, but I start everything with health, energy, and power. Building the brand. So any content creation is in red. Aubrey is my youngest daughter. For those of you that have children, she's 16. And so if you can get a 16-year-old to want to spend time with you, then that deserves time on your calendar. And then I have personal and opportunity space. So I've put my working hours in here, and you can fill this out to whatever is best for you. But once you do that, it's going to show you what your time allocation is, as well as the hours that you've put in. So my calendar has a lot of repeating tasks. Let me see if I can close this out. And the reason I do this is because I need a quick at-a-glance visual. And now that I'm training my assistant to manage my calendar, she's able to do the same thing. So on any given day, the first 2 to 3 hours of my day is focus time. I am most energized first thing in the morning. I get up early, I have my coffee, and I am just cranking out the things that creative juices are flowing. But even before that, you can see I start every morning. I call it my miracle morning. I journal, I meditate, and I manifest every single morning. It gets me in the right headspace. Then I have bonding with Breezy. That's my nickname for my daughter. I drive her to school on the mornings that she's with me, because if I can lock my 16-year-old in the car with me for 5 minutes and her school is literally that close, I know a little bit about what's going on in her world. These are non-negotiable. Jelaine is my virtual assistant. We get on a call 30 minutes every Monday and Thursday. as a touch point. And then my inbox is zeroed out by 9:30, meaning anything that I have to touch, I have. And really, this is something that Jelaine is taking over. So I'm going to move this to noon in about 2 weeks.
Hey, Beth, really quick, and I don't want to throw you off your flow.
Yeah.
How did you find Jelaine? Because it sounds like she's a complete G.
She's fantastic. I have gone through a couple of VAs. Some are good, some are not so good. I actually found her on Upwork, and there's a ton of resources for virtual assistants. What I like about Upwork is there's built-in monitoring. I do pay her a premium. She's actually, I shared more than what your average VA would be, but what she's able to do is amazing, and she's well worth it. So what I've done is I said, hey, I'm going to give you a 30-day contract on Upwork. And then you're reading all their reviews and you're seeing how other people have worked with them. Upwork will take screenshots of their work throughout the day, so you know they're actually working in the time that you've allocated for them. And I said, it's essentially a probationary period. And at the end of 30 days, we'll have a conversation and see if this is still a good fit for both of us. And now that I'm confident in her and her abilities and just the way we work together, I am going to transition her to be on payroll where I'm paying her directly.
Love it. Well, and I want I want you to get back into your flow. I'm going to put the Upwork link in there, but I think what's important, Beth, I'm sure you would agree, it's what she's able to do, but probably to some degree more importantly, especially when it comes to these VAs versus like spoiled Americans and Canadians, it's what they're willing to do. And so
Yes.
it's like, because I want to get somebody to handle some menial tasks for me, and I'm like, I'm just afraid to hire some former Starbucks employee that they're just going to be too snooty to do it. Where like sometimes you'll get these VAs, and like you said, the money that they're making in the Philippines or whatever is like, it's a big blessing for their life, and so they're just willing to do the menial things you need them to do.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm recognizing that her skill set is actually beyond what I have her currently doing. So we have a plan in place that once we've built out all of the standard operating procedures and have this really dialed in, she's going to hire her replacement. She's going to hire her replacement, and then she's going to move to more of like a chief of staff role for me, where she is more, because I love automations and technology, and so does she. I have the ideas, she's going to execute. But
Awesome.
I'm essentially promoting her, and then my new executive assistant will be reporting to her, but she's going to be the one to train them. So stay tuned. I'll let you know how that goes.
Beth, could you give an example of what you're doing, or I mean, during your focus time when it's
Yes.
Vision and then Beth by a Billion? Like, what is that, like clients facing stuff, or is that on your business? Other
So
things
my
you're working
focus
on?
time for Envision is where I'm setting appointments with buyers and sellers.
Okay.
And where I am in my stage of business, I don't need to have this daily. Because I'm also training agents and delegating buyers and sellers to them. So this is I am in my database with all focus features on. Nobody's disrupting me. I'm 1000% focused on setting appointments. On Buy a Billion, I am doing one of two things. I am either taking the content creation and building out, I'm building out some evergreen courses, and the intention is to launch the Buy a Billion Academy within the next 30 to 45 days. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm reaching out to any agents who have inquired about coming into my world, whether that's joining Real or joining my team. So I make sure I allocate those specific times, because those are my two top revenue generating, is working with my clients, building out the Buy a Billion brand, and content creation, which is why they're all here and blocked off every single week.
Okay. Awesome.
What you guys will notice is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 time slots in this royal blue that says open for appointment. So my objective every week is to turn at least 3 of these green, ideally 4. The reason I do this is because when I get on a call with a buyer or a seller or an agent that wants to have a conversation about joining my team, I don't want to do all the back and forth of, I have this time. Do you have this time? What time works for you? I can literally pull up my calendar and say, Amy, I have time Monday at 3 o'clock. or Thursday at noon? Which would you prefer? Because again, I'm running my business. I'm not having these wide open blocks where it's like, well, anytime between 3 and 7. No. And Amy says to me, Beth, I'm available Thursday at noon. That works great. All I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this time slot. I'm going to rename it Amy, and I'm going to turn it green and then save it. And I have to move our floating heads again to do that. But my point is, it's a very easy visual and it avoids a lot of the back and forth. And it's helping me control my time. I know and I am mentally prepared that these are the days and times that I run appointments. I only do evening appointments on Monday and Wednesday. If I encounter somebody that absolutely cannot accommodate that, I refer them to somebody else on my team. Because you have to remove that scarcity mindset that if I say no to this person, something else isn't going to come along. Actually, if I say no to this person, I'm best serving both of us because I'm staying within my energy levels of when I know I work best, and I'm giving them access to somebody who's going to prioritize them.
Would you still have that mentality if you were in your first few years of the business and you were in a building stage?
I did, because my first few years in the business, I was also working another job. So I'm maybe not the best person to say, hey, what about this? But I wholeheartedly believe that nobody should just drop everything and run the moment that somebody reaches out to them. There's a degree of exclusivity that I think is valuable. And I use that in my buyer presentations. I know exactly how many buyers I'm willing to work with at any point in time before I start to feel overwhelmed or exhausted. And right now that's 3. So if I have an open buyer slot, when I have my consult, I say, and I work with a maximum of 3 buyers at any given time. I have 1 available slot. Are you interested in having me represent you? And if I get a call and I'm already working with 3 buyers, then I refer it out because it's the right thing for everybody. And this is all very, very much by design, no pun intended, because I know where my value lies. I know I work best when I'm working with listings, sellers. I know I'm also creating more opportunities for the agents on my team who I can put in a classroom and do a training with all day long. But if they never have the opportunity to have the real life experience, then they're not going to learn at the level that they should. So by allocating certain clients to them, I'm still a resource to them. They're still getting me, just not directly. And then you guys will see this yellow. I am home every night by 6 o'clock. And my phone goes on do not disturb. So to put things into context, yes, I had a couple rough years with things going on in the business, but I have either pending or closed right now almost 9 million in volume, and I am in a market that the average sale price is just under 300,000. So the reason I share that is not to boast, but to show you what's possible. You can absolutely run a killer business and have time for whatever it is that's most important to you. This set intentions for the week.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, go for it.
Any of these times that you say that are open for appointment, would that be going on showings or going on listing appointments? Or you said talking to somebody that would want to enter your world from that you would benefit financially? If you were going on showings or going on a listing appointment, where in your schedule would be booking the showings or prep or market research?
So that's why I do have some of the white space,
Yeah.
but full disclosure, those are things that I'm teaching my assistant to do.
Okay.
So I'm now, like when I'm doing, I don't say CMA, I use professional assessment of value. When I'm doing my professional assessment of value, I zoom in with her, I show her how I'm doing it. So, and essentially what has happened is it stemmed from this kind of weekly time audit where I've started keeping track of everything that I do throughout the day. And then I'm like, again, is this something that I would pay me $50 an hour to do? And when the answer is no, I'm starting to automate or delegate. Now it takes time, right? You can't fully move out of the business until you've backfilled yourself and replaced yourself in some of these things. But there are things that for the foreseeable future, I will do. I will go on the listing appointments. I will create the content, and I will have the conversations with the agents that are exploring coming into my world. But those, my goal is to get to, those are the 3 things that I do every week exclusively. So scheduling showings, I'm teaching her how to do. Prepping for listings, I'm teaching her how to do. But you'll notice there is white space on my calendar. If you talked to me even a year ago, I had everything outlined for the full day. And what I found was that just didn't feel good to me. I need to have some space for the things that you can't expect are going to come up that come up. And Amy, you asked about the space. So I don't necessarily want to run 8 appointments in a week. There are some weeks that happens. So one of 2 things occurs when I get to, like, today at 3:00, I don't have an appointment. I'm going to use this time to either get back on the phones and set an appointment if I haven't already filled in my 3 to 4 for the week, or I'm going to use it to prep for one of my appointments.
Okay.
And then the set intentions for the week, every Sunday, I sit down, and I learned this from Sharon. He refers to it as review preview in terms of how he communicates with his clients. I do the same thing for myself. I review my previous week, and I look at where did these hours go? And if I'm super heavy on meetings for the upcoming week, so I'm reviewing the week before and I'm previewing my week ahead. And if I have a lot of gray on my calendar and I know that I'm going to get to the end of the week and be exhausted, then I'm not going to wait till the end of the week. I'm going to reach out, or have Jelaine, my assistant, reach out and start moving some of these things around. Like, what meetings actually have to happen this week, just because I know that that's something that I don't get a lot of energy from. And if there's too many things that are on my calendar and I don't have enough white space, because guys, sometimes we just need time to take a step back and think and breathe, then I'll ask her to reschedule things. But it's something that I have to look at every single week. And she's learning how I like to work. So the more she spends time with me, the more she'll be able to do this on my behalf. So that is my calendar. Hopefully it didn't make you guys go cross-eyed. But again, block out time for the specific tasks. And those tasks are also the things that are important to you that are not work related, because I don't think anybody got into the business to just be burnt out and driven into the ground. Like, we're here to support a life. So you saw, like, my time with my family is non-negotiable. If you need somebody who's going to be available at 8:00 at night, I'm not the agent for you, but I will get you in contact with the right agent. All right. So the next thing that I've done, and again, thanks to Sharon, I love this because I feel like I've joked that if you saw my CRM before learning this from Sharon, it was like, I wasn't sure if we were categorizing lead flow or if I was ordering chicken wings, because it was like, this person's hot, this person's medium, this person's medium mild. It was just too complicated. So simplify your life and simplify your CRM. I have a policy for working with buyers and sellers. The only way I know if somebody is someone that should be on my calendar is doing some basic quantifying. And it starts with, how much time am I going to even invest in conversing with this person? So this is where the 5-star prospect comes in, and I love this. They get 1 star if they're engaged with me, meaning I've reached out and they've actually responded. They get a 2nd star if they're friendly and collaborative. If there's somebody that told me to F off, well, then I'm just going to put them on a nurture campaign and pretend like they don't exist. They get 3 stars if they know what they want. They can clearly articulate, I'm looking for a 3-bed, 2-bath, whatever, ranch style home in Orchard Park. They get a 4th star if they have a realistic timeline for action. And generally speaking, if they say, oh, I'm about a year out, there's probably some more qualifying questions to go into that, because I find that's like a default response. So I'll ask them, okay, what's going to happen in a year? And if they can't really answer that question, then they probably aren't sure. But sometimes they're like, well, I have a lease, or whatever the case may be. If it's truly a legitimate, I need to wait a year, that's a different story. And then they get 5 stars if they say, and I want to work with you. So I will actively nurture, me personally, actively nurture anybody who's 4 or 5 stars. But anybody who's 3 stars or less goes on an automated nurture campaign and until they start showing habits that they are getting closer to being ready, willing, and able, which is my next piece. So again, keeping things simple, I am going to actively nurture the leads that have 4 or 5 stars. And once they get to that level, I want to know if the buyers are ready, willing, and able. And I think a lot of times we struggle with this qualification because we're not always sure the right questions to ask, or we've got some engagement going and we don't necessarily want to like put anybody off. Guys, I have scripting out of the wazoo for this. So if you're like, I know I should ask them if they're pre-approved, but I'm just not comfortable, I don't have good verbiage, message me on Instagram. I can give you anything that you need. I actually, if I had more time, I'd take you through an entire correspondence that I had with a prospective buyer who I'm not setting in a buyer consult. I'm not showing you how we're not doing anything until you've spoken to my preferred lender. And there's a way to do that tactfully. And then same with my sellers. Like I have outlined literally pen to paper, this is my ideal seller. I know the characteristics I want them to have. I know the price point that I want them to have. I know how I want them to feel about me. I want them to respect my professionalism. I don't want them to be, debating my commission. Like I have clearly outlined the characteristics and of what I look for in my clients. And when I say I do my miracle morning, my manifestation and meditation, I'm looking at that list every single day. Because energy flows where attention goes. So you need to know what it is that you're looking for. Otherwise, it may present itself and you don't see it. So because I'm all about action, I can tell you things and you can take knowledge all day long, but if you don't actually execute, it doesn't mean anything. Here are my recommendations for you guys. Define what your standards of success are, and then put it into the agent profitability calculator unless you have your own means of tracking things. Then design your calendar, create your own policy for working with buyers and sellers, and understand that this is something that you will monitor and refine because it needs to evolve as you evolve. Your business is a reflection on you. So as you grow as a human and your priorities shift, that should be reflected in your business. And then if anybody wants the agent profitability download, you can scan that QR code, follow me on Instagram, and I wanted to make sure we've got 11 minutes for Q&A.
So good. Well, I'm going to give you guys a second to grab those QR codes before we take the screen down, and then let's just open it up. Yeah, Ron, exactly. Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. You follow that. Is that the formula you're following, Beth?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are you following Miracle Morning? Is that what you're doing on
Yeah.
your morning routine?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Has everybody read that? I'm going to just move your screen. Hold on.
Do you want me to, I can stop sharing?
Yeah, I stopped sharing for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, guys, this is your opportunity. We have a few minutes. We have this brilliant mind with us who's so willing to share and to give. Does anybody have any questions for Beth? I have to say, I just feel like calm and clear listening to you and the way you're conveying how you're running your business. It's making me very introspective on what I can do to systematize, implement more no's, and create an even more structured environment in my own business. And I thought I was pretty structured till I saw this.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it. Anybody else? Any feedback? Any input?
And we do have, so if you guys want to hear the correspondence, if there's no questions, I want to make sure you guys get what you need. But I think just if I talk you through this, you might take a nugget or two that you're like, oh, I'll say it that way going forward.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, cool. Let me just pull it up. All right, so I got this text message. And the other thing is I am diligent about, I have trained myself not to respond to emails or text messages during my off time, because you teach people how to treat you. And when I manage the expectations to my clients that, hey, you're not going to reach me after 6 p.m. And the reason being is that oftentimes I'm with clients, and on the nights that I'm not with clients, I think my family deserves my same undivided attention. Wouldn't you agree? And if they say, no, I don't agree, then they're not the client for me. Most people go, oh yeah, but I set the expectation out of the gate and then I have to abide by it myself.
You're doing that during your consultation.
Yes, during my consultations. And if you call my phone and get my voicemail, it will say, if you're calling after 6 p.m., your call will be returned the next day. Because I'm going to tell you guys right now, there are no real emergencies in real estate. I'm sorry. And I've seen it all. Like from having a seller die 2 days before we were going to market to everything in between, there are no real emergencies. If something's really going sideways, I'm going to need the lender. I'm in an attorney state, but you're going to need the attorney or title, and you're not getting a hold of them at 7, 8 o'clock at night. So set the expectation out of the gate, and then make sure you follow your own rules. So I received this text message, and it's from a young lady who I know that her mom is interested in purchasing a double in South Buffalo with her brother. And she said, there's one in particular that came on the market. Would you be willing to show it to us? And so that's okay, now I know I need to kind of recalibrate expectations that I don't just drop everything and go show properties. So my response was, hi, Nicole, I'm happy to help. Please provide the address of the property. Have you had a chance to speak to a mortgage lender to understand your purchasing power, or is that something that I can help with? Sounds very different than, have you been pre-approved? Everything that I communicate comes from a place of consultation. She said, thanks for getting back to me. Here's the address. We have not spoke to a lender. It would be mostly cash and non-contingent. So my internal monologue wants me to go, well, what's mostly cash mean? But I didn't go there. I looked up the property, and the property is actually pending. But if it weren't, I still want to look at the property, read the notes. And then I went back to her and I said, of course, as an FYI, this property has accepted an offer. In order to schedule a showing, we would need to provide proof of funds for a cash offer or a pre-approval letter from a lender. The exception would be an open house. Let me know which you would prefer. So again, I'm setting the expectation that without a pre-approval or proof of funds, the only way you're seeing a property is at an open house. She said, let me talk to my brother and get back to you. And then she texted me back and said, can we set up a time to speak with you and your lender so that we have a better understanding of everything? I said, absolutely. I sent her my lender's preferred contact. I said, this is my preferred lender. You can reach out to him via phone or start the application online. And then once you're comfortable with the numbers, we'll arrange a time to sit down together so I can best understand your needs and walk you through the process. So again, I'm saying, without saying, you're not even getting on my calendar if you're not pre-approved.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying I can't talk to you until you're pre-approved. I said, when you're comfortable with the numbers.
Yeah.
So guys, there's ways to get to the point that you want to get to without feeling ick.
Yeah.
So point is, this morning, she's already completed her application. My preferred lender is working on her pre-approval. Once she has it, she'll get on my calendar.
And you haven't reacted whatsoever or gone out of your time blocks or anything at all.
Nope.
Truly taking the control and the power.
Yeah.
I love it. This is so good. This is
what I love so much about what Beth is doing is what the comical part of this, and I know it's a little different in Canada, but in the US, it takes like 2 days to become a realtor. And then we're pissed when we don't make doctor and lawyer money. People who spent 8 to 12 years postgraduate to become doctors and lawyers. And we're like, dude, I'm working my A off and I got my real estate license after a week of school. And like, why am I not making $400,000? Like Beth is very specifically saying, and I have a belief that once a doctor gets their license and we get our license, we have to be significantly more creative because our floor is debt and zero. A doctor's floor, 150 grand a year if you're like a doctor, is the base of what you're going to make. 60% of agents made $0 last year. They probably actually went into debt. So if we want to make what they make, we have to outwork them post licensure. Now, pre-licensure, I mean, it's a joke, but post licensure, we have to be more creative, more systematic, more dedicated, more passionate. Like, we have to do all those things. And I'm not knocking our friends in the dental field or whatever, but it's like, just by virtue of having your dental license, you're going to make money. Having a real estate license does nothing. And Beth, I love how systematic you are about this, because if we want to make that their money.
Joe, I mean, I called on doctors. I spent my days talking to doctors, from family practitioner up to urologists and colorectal surgeons, which, if you ever want to have some entertaining lunch conversation, talk to a colorectal surgeon. But my point being is, they've all started through med school at a very, entry level for their field. But as they wanted to control their time and their income more, they became more specialized. And that's what you have to do as well. Jennifer, I saw that you were asking about the executive assistant role. We've got 2 minutes, so I'll talk on it very high level. If you want more details, just DM me on Instagram. I'm happy to share anything that I have. So I've tried this a few times, and in my experience, to find somebody that met the standard that I was looking for, I needed to pay an above average rate for the area that they were in, because I didn't want somebody who was, basically, I wanted someone who was very proactive and a self-starter. And my conversations when I was interviewing for this role through Upwork was, I'm essentially looking for, if you follow EOS, an integrator. Like, I'm the visionary, and I need somebody who's going to take my ideas and help streamline the process, and also come back to me with some suggestions. So the first thing I had her do was create an SOP, or a standard operating procedure, for how she would organize my inbox. And I gave this same project to the 5 candidates that I had. And so it was a trial run. I compensated each of them for their time. And Jelaine came back to me with the most detailed and thoughtful project. So I said, all right, now we're going to move on to like the 30-day probationary period. She has various labels in my inbox. Leads is anything that would be revenue generating. So an agent's requesting an appointment with me, or a buyer or seller is requesting an appointment with me. And because I'm not in my inbox all day, I use Slack as a communication tool. There's an automation that when she tags something as a lead, it goes into a Slack channel that's called Beth's Money Box, and it pings me, and it's like, this is something that needs to be a priority. So I can respond without ever going into my inbox. So there's 3 labels that I look at. I look at leads, I look at needs attention, and I look at read only. And my read only is just like updates of things that I need to be aware of. She is now moving into calendar management. She is also helping clean up our Google Drive and all the things on the back end, and creating SOPs. And then we'll backfill her position, and she will hire her replacement, and I'll promote her. So that's a very high level. And we are at time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, guys. Can we just drop a couple of accolades into gratitude and
number 1 takeaway
into the chat? We appreciate you, Beth. Thank you so much for joining us. Guys, the recording, as always, will be available within 24 hours on our YouTube channel and in our Facebook group for United Community. We look forward to welcoming you back next Monday, 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern time, for another Rocket Fuel. Beth, thank you. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye, guys.
Great day, everybody.